Good day, we're the Team 9 and we're going to present a final project about the cultural difference of 6 different countries and what a Mexican user should take into account when doing business with them.
Good afternoon. I am EMILIANO NÚñEZ, and I'm going to show you the European future of this project with the country of Slovenia.
Bila sva v disku, ko je LPS igral, Fičo spet je neki pisku, žvižej solo je zasral. Takrat se mi je že...
It is a country in Central Europe located near the continent's biggest regional powers, Germany and Italy, having Ljubljana as its capital. Around 1/4 of the population lives around the metro area, and this country is kind of a hotspot of kind of a minority ethnic population between Hungarians, Italians, several Croatians, Germans, all the kind of stuff. This could actually give a benefit of the people's environment to which they could actually express to be more tolerant, more open to opportunities, more exposed to different cultural backgrounds of people that could actually be kind of attractive to be eyes upon with negotiating with people of such a country. For its international relations, ever since the independence of Slovenia from the Yugoslavia in 1990, the country has been shifting from the government-centered market style communism and kind of a fake autonomous situation of being an independent country to shifting to more successfully be integrated into the European market has been playing kind of a good role on being a good example of a post-communist country of a post-Cold War era of adapting itself to being a good role model of a new country to which being economically good, financially good, politically stable, etc. Slovenia joined the European Union and in the NATO in May of 2004. Slovenia has one commissioner in the European Commission, and 7 Slovene parliamentarians were elected to the European Parliament at the election on June of 2004. Slovenia subsequently succeeded in meeting the Maastricht criteria and joined the Eurozone, the first transition country to do so, in January of 2007. It was the first post-communist country to hold the presidency of the Council of the European Union for 6 months of 2008, and in July of 2010, it became a member of the OECD. So in contrast of the ex-Yugoslav countries, Slovenia has been doing pretty good on the international stage, or well, at least in the continental stage, it works as a member, well, a key factor of a member ever since the end of the Cold War. Government-wise, it's kind of a mixture between the remnants of the communist-style Yugoslav government, between the German and Italian system, but it's actually more centered on the Italian one. Slovenia is a parliamentary democracy republic with a multi-party system. The head of the state is the president, who is elected by popular vote and has an important integrative role. The president is elected for 5 years and a maximum for 2 consecutive terms. The president has a representative role and is the commander-in-chief of the Slovenian armed forces. The economy is actually kind of doing well above its weight. Slovenia has a developed economy and is the richest Slavic country by GDP per capita, running from $25,000 a year per person, and being at the top global economies in terms of human capital. Almost 2/3 of people are employed in services and 1/3 in the industry and construction. High level of openness makes Slovenia extremely sensitive to economic conditions in its main trading partner and changes in its international price competitiveness. The main industries are motor vehicles, electric and electronic equipment, machinery, pharmaceutical, and fuels. Even though ever since the end of the Cold War, the post-communist countries have had a tendency of most of its young population moving towards other more developed countries in the continent ever since more in the integration of the former in the European Union. Slovenia has had a good balance or mixed out of young people having improved the educational system and more openness to the market to be more flexible to people to invest and make it innovations in a good investment projects in the country to innovate and to improve the economy. And a good proportion of the people actually study abroad and start a business around the whole continent are actually kind of a low percentage of the population compared to other countries that suffered the same economical crisis ever since the end of the Cold War. Even so more with the comparison of the ex-Yugoslav countries, since Slovenia has been doing pretty good on that stand. Education-wise, Slovenia's education rank is the 12th best in the world and 4th best in the European Union, been significantly higher than the OECD average according to the Program for International Student Assessment. Even so more since the education system in Slovenia, it's more comparable with the Italian system of master system degree, to which more of a young percentage of the population actually more intended to be centralized above specialized tech or TIC specialized works or jobs, more so to be specialized in new investment projects inside the country. Among people aged between 25 to 64, 12% have attended higher education, while on average, Slovenes have 9.6 years of formal education. According to an OECD report, 83% of adults ages 25 to 64 have earned the equivalent of a high school degree, well above the OECD average of 74%. Among 25 to 34-year-olds, the rate is 93%. So it just lives to show that actually the young population of the country is well equipped, well educated. There is an actual sense of hope to improve the education system, the economic system, to which Slovenia is actually pulling up its former weight to actually achieve a good amount of achievement, to which could be at the level of major powers to which it could be compared to France, Italy, or Germany. Now, the cultural barrier scheme to compare it to Mexico, it's actually one of the more tamer ones to compare it with, since its culture is not that influenced upon otherwise, to which it will be compared to what a hotspot of cultural backgrounds it actually is. Since Slovenia has historically been the crossroads of Slavic, Germanic, and Romance languages and cultures, to which its most recent social-political interaction has been with the Serbo-Croatian peoples. After 1990, the Catholic Church regained some of its former influence, but Slovenia remains the largest secularized society with just around half of the population being Catholic. So a good proportion of the population is actually leaning towards more of the agnostic, atheist kind of branch of the religious background, to which, much of the costumes or traditions of the country are still being mainly focused on the Christianity sector, the Catholic one, but it's not that. But it doesn't play that much of a role nowadays. So it's not that much of a problem to talk about or to take into consideration. Even though to talk with people or as a topic to take upon in working backgrounds. Social behavior wise, there are people that are more reserved. They're really not that much of an openness. That doesn't mean that they are not amicable, that they're not friendly. It's just that they are more reserved. They're more open to be given a personal distances, like being more acute, being more respectful about the intimate information of others, to which they could be not so easily to be open with other people, even though in a working environment that could actually be kind of helpful just to limit how much of interaction people can have with them. And that led us to the greeting. How can you greet someone with it? It is just kind of a presentation card to begin with, like what your social status is, what your hierarchical status is, economic status. But just to greet someone plainly as it is, it's just shaking a hand, like present yourself as how it is. It's not much of a deal. Punctuality wise, they take very seriously how much of the time they actually take upon in case of when to start a work meeting, when to start a reunion. So they actually see kind of rude, kind of unrespectful to be out of the hour they've actually been pointed at to start working, or at least to make an appointment. Actually be a rupture in confidence for the people actually work with them. So they actually take too much into consideration how much you take into account how early you can go upon work, or a time you can go upon work. Work meetings, it's pretty formal. There's nothing to take much into consideration. It's just formalities. Just take your role in the enterprise and the company very seriously. With the person you're dealing with, at least with your colleagues, your employees, it could be more taken upon with the sense of just taking the work as it is, not chit-chatting too much, not taking too much into confidence to work with people, just working. They're kind of the stereotypical sense of the German work culture. If it is time just to work, that's gonna be it. Outfit-wise, it's just a plain suit with its scarf and with its plainly it's just being formal, as well as being expected to the females, just plain suit, like all black. There's not much to be taken upon. It's more of a kind of not being too outstanding to the people, like not taking too much of the outfit code. So it's just being taken into the norm, that just being completely formal. And from gifts wise, it's more taking upon into consideration just something symbolic, something like food. It could be a treat, it could be something symbolic of the culture, it could be about the religion, a souvenir, something that could actually be looked upon to make confidence in the workplace, just for people to to be attached to you sufficiently enough to make the work environment better. So it's not that much of a big of a deal. To finalize with this presentation, at least for the country of Slovenia, it's actually kind of interesting to take into consideration how much of its recent histories has been taken upon, at least, and how much it could be presented about the end of Yugoslavia, for instance. How much of a shift they actually take upon into consideration for how well integrated into the European market they are. And even though they could be at first glance just people that take too much pride, at least in their culture, or at least too much emphasis on how much of a personal and intimation they could actually have with information with other people's, that could actually be more beneficial since they're more open-minded, they're open to opportunities for innovation. They could be more beneficial to work within them than just the actual barriers you could actually be faced upon. Slovenian is not the only language they actually speak. Due to these hotspot cultures, they actually tend to be speaking two or more languages. So English is just sufficient enough. They could be actually more to it that could actually be expected to working with Slovene people.
Hi, my name is Karen Soto, and I'm going to talk about Costa Rica.
que la Virgen de los Ángeles bajó y cuando la vio tan bonita al cielo jamás regresó. Su mano ha criado a la juela.
Costa Rica is a mountainous country located between the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Through time, Costa Rica evolved from volcanoes growing out of the ocean, creating a natural bridge. This is one of the major reasons Costa Rica enjoys the greatest density of species in the world. In a general culture view, the government is a presidential representative democratic republic. Tropical climates along the coast to highland climates occur in all altitudes throughout the country, offering the greatest variety of temperature zones. The official language is Spanish. A small percentage of Costa Rica population on the Caribbean coast also speak Patois, which is a kind of English Creole. The literacy rate is 97%. About education, Costa Rica has 4 state-funded universities and several private schools. 1/4 of the university-age population enrolls in higher school. The official religion is Catholicism. Although many people claim to be Catholic, a very large percentage are actually not practicing, and Costa Ricans are very tolerant of other religions. Family bonds and values are very strong. It's sacred to Costa Ricans and is an important cultural aspect of the country. About the culture of consumption, in which clothes, cars, houses are market status, is most conspicuous among members of the upper middle class, roughly 10% of the population. A fact about the military activity: the military was abolished following the 1948 Civil War. Security forces include the Civil Guard, Rural Guard, Judicial Police, and several smaller intelligence units. Private guards protect business and middle and upper class communities. The Costa Ricans are in general welcoming, friendly, fun-loving, helpful. They refer to themselves as ticos. This quality lies at the root of their peaceful kind nature. They tend to add these words as a suffix in order to create a diminutive. Instead of saying to something that is small and white, blanquito, they might say blanquitico. The ticos have a common saying that they use all the time to say hello, to say thanks, and they use in a variety of ways and just proves the way they are relaxed and how they are about day-to-day things. They say pura vida for almost everything. Essentially, the meaning of pura vida is simple life. This has a lot to do with the culture and attitude of ticos. The ticos move at their own pace and sometimes a snail pace. Things get accomplished when they get accomplished. There is nothing like deadlines. 2 days can quickly turn to 2 weeks or 2 months. This may seem frustrating, but it's the way in which people have lived for years. Not only consistently ranked as one of the happiest populations on the planet, Costa Rica also have one of the longest life expectancy of any country. Okay, Costa Rica current and stable economic performance indicators have mainly depend on tourism, real estate, agriculture, investment and business, commodity and electronics manufacturing, and trading industries. The economy is heavily dependent on tourism, specifically ecotourism. Other major sectors in the economy that fluctuate more include the service industries, trade, wholesale, and retail sales. Costa Rica spends much of the money that will be spent on maintaining a standing army to pay for the arts, for education to a PhD, and for universal healthcare. The government controls key utilities, including electricity, water, fixed line telephone, and port and great facilities, and the entire population is eligible for free medical care, but private enterprise is still strong and influential in policy making. Um, hmm, okay, about trade. Since the late 18th, Costa Rica exports have diversified beyond the traditional staples of coffee and bananas. With the arrival of Intel and other technology companies, computer microchips became the country's top export in the early 21st century. Coffee, bananas, and pineapples are still shipped in great quantities to the United States and Western and Central Europe. Other exports of importance include textiles, fish, shrimp, sugar, and cut flowers. To talk about the business culture of Costa Rica, it is important to recognize that it is a country where networking is important, since it runs through a base of personnel who might have a connection you need. As with many Latin cultures, Costa Ricans tend to be really risk averse, which makes it important that they know and trust the people with whom they do business. Costa Ricans prefer face-to-face meetings to do business by telephone or in writing, which are seen as too impersonal. Appearance matters to Costa Ricans and indicate respectability, as you should dress well and try to stay in a reputable order. Men wish to wear a suit and tie, women should wear business wear. Senior positions in business are predominantly held by the upper class, so it is important that you pay attention to the hierarchy and show appropriate deference and respect to those in position of authority. Although Costa Ricans have more flexible approach to time, they tend to be punctual for business meetings, especially if they are accustomed to working with international companies. In business things, punctuality is really important. Okay. For negotiation, there are important points to take into account. In the first meetings, business matters are not discussed. Be aware that negotiation and decision take a long time, so use the time in between to try and build your relationship further, as this will be your advantage. An existing relationship is essential for attraction to be made in negotiation. Business is often connected to who you know. Always spend time in engaging in a small talk, uh, as this is like to be expected, and it will also help to with the relationship. Ask, for example, about the beautiful surroundings of Costa Rica. It will take several minutes to come to an agreement. Negotiation and time for consultation are important, so taking a direct approach and trying to hurry proceedings may will be perceived as aggressive. Impatience is also seen as a weakness and may will damage your reputation. As I say in another slide, business culture is hierarchical. Decisions are made by the person with the most authority. And business card that are exchanged during introductions with everyone at the meeting. Business card should contain both your professional and your educational qualifications, since Costa Ricans are status conscious. And some general advices for the business relationship could be: at the beginning of the negotiation, it is not wise to tutear, and this should be maintained in terms of grace. Remember to carry your business cards, always maintaining good personal relationship with your partners, as they are a determining factor in the success of your business. And send a thank you note to the most senior executive after the meeting. In terms of business culture, there are many similarities with Mexico. Let's start mentioning that in general they have a lot in common, such as the official language, religion, the daily perception of schedules, the kindness of the people, and the importance of family values. As for the business culture, they share working days and schedules. In both the work week is from Monday to Friday, and it is advisable to schedule appointments in the morning. The formal clothing in both countries are more inclined to do business with people they know, and it is essential for them to be able to trust in the future partners. And in the first meetings, business will be not discussed directly. These factors do not warrant successful communication, they facilitate it. Since both parties are familiar with their way of playing and negotiating, it is still important to emphasize that a Mexican negotiator must take into account patience, punctuality, and business cards, because this is of great importance of the Costa Ricans. And I will also advise being diplomatic, speaking with respect, understanding and knowing the hierarchies of the people you're doing business with, because these aspects tends to vary more with the Mexican entrepreneurs.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'm going to talk about the country Uruguay.
Cuántas lunas que se van y nosotros esperando que despierte el corazón que parece estar quebrado.
First, we have some basic information, like it's important to know to learn more about the country, and like, for example, is how it is subdivided and what is the most popular city in the country. And first, it's subdivided into 19 departments and 125 municipalities. The most popular city in the country is Montevideo, and we have some numbers of the inhabitants and the national total of the population. By the other hand, we have the main economy, like in which areas are they most focused because they are good doing that. And for example, the agriculture, forestry and livestock, mineral and energy resources, and the main industries are paper, cardboard, cement, and oil refining. And then we have the international relations. Uruguay has traditionally had strong political and cultural ties with its neighboring countries and Europe. Like, for them, it's more easy to make deals with these kind of countries because they are more close to them. Uruguay is a strong defender of constitutional democracy, political pluralism, and individual freedoms. Historically, international relations have been guided by the principles of non-intervention and multilateralism. This means that they organize like the deals for groups of 3 or more countries. Respect for national sovereignty and trust in the law to resolve disputes. They trust in the law for solve the problems. Uruguay also reflects the international relations of its campaign to seek export market and foreign investment. Like they focus también on they try to attract the foreign investment to make sure that they have good economy, like more investments, and it means like the foreign countries trust in the Uruguay economy. And then we have a little explanation of Uruguay's economy. And the most important info of this is like Uruguay stands out in Latin America for being an egalitarian society, for its high per capita income, and for its low level of inequality and poverty. And in relative terms, its middle class is the largest in America. And Uruguay's economy is dominated by the export-oriented agricultural sector. They have so many like resources that they can export, like rice, wheat, corn, sunflower, sorghum, barley, and soybeans, sugarcane, and livestock are the fundamental resources of the economy. They export this and like is their income that they receive. Like they focus on this because they have no resources to this. And then we have the education. The most important here is that Uruguay's education is free. It's secular, free, and compulsory. It's free since the kindergarten to university graduation. And thanks to this is like Uruguay standing out as one of the countries with the highest literacy rate in Latin America. And then we have the culture. Talking about the language, they don't have like any official language. They have the Spanish, that is the most spoken in the country, the Portuguese and Riverense Portuñol in certain parts of the country, and a dialect of Portuguese are spoken in a minority in some border regions. Like a little number of people talks this language. The religion, the state is secular with absolute freedom of worship. You can choose a religion and there is no problem with that. But the main religion chosen by the population is the Catholicism, with a 45.7% of the population. This is the main religion that they has in the country. And finally, we have a comparison of the Mexican-Uruguayan negotiation. First, Mexico has a free trade agreement which allows its positioning in the region. For Uruguay, it's important to the expansion and diversification of the market. Their business sector is small and closed. Many of the Uruguayans studied in American universities, and they have the culture of the United States. Here we have how to negotiate and some advices for the negotiation and after the negotiation. Like they prefer the verbal message than technical arguments. And they like to present their point of views rather than exchanging opinions with the other party. Uruguayans are quite proud and it's difficult for them to change their minds. When an agreement is reached, it is advisable to make a contract which the commitments and obligations of the parties are clearly established.
Hi, my name is NARCISO and I'm going to talk about Tuvalu. Well, now let's start talking about Tuvalu more formally. Tuvalu is a group of 9 tiny islands in the South Pacific which won independence from the United Kingdom in the 78. Life on the island is simple and often harsh. There are no streams or rivers, so the collection of rain is essential. The de facto capital is the village of Guayacu, where most government offices are located. It is a constituent part of Funafuri Adult. Now let's talk about economy. Most Tuvaluans are subsistence farmers and are aided by remittance from relatives working overseas. A small quantity of copper is produced from export and the sales of stamp account for modest earning and fields are collected from foreign fishing fleets. But the country depends heavily on foreign aid. It imports most of its food and manufacturing goods. Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan are among the country's major trade partners. Tuvalu uses Australian currency, but also uses its own coinage, which is Tuvalu dollar. There is a single bank, a joint government commercial bank. Tuvalu has airlines with Kiribati and Fiji. For international shipping, it depends on irregular regional service. Tuvalu has a government too, so let's talk about it. Tuvalu is a constitutional monarchy within the Commonwealth, with the British monarch as a head of state. The government is a parliamentary democracy with a numerical legislature elected by universal adult suffrage. There are no political parties. The prime minister is chosen by and from the legislature. Education. The government provides universal primary education and under a joint arrangement with the Church of Tuvalu, secondary education to school certificate level for select pupils. A few are sent overseas for further education and training. About the medical facilities are centralized on Funafuri, with all other islands have clinics with trained medical staff. Most health services are provided by the public health services, but family planning services are jointly provided by the public health services and the Tuvalu Family Planning Association. Now, culture. The Tuvaluan nation and the language Tuvaluan is closely related to someone. English is taught in the school and widely used. The vast majority of the population belong to the Church of Tuvalu. About 1/3 of the population lives in Funafuri, the center of government, and also the population growth has been slowed by family planning. Life expectancy at here is about 60 years. About 10% of the population lives overseas, either pursuing education, working on the naval for the state industry, or working on the merchant shipping. Now, the religion that they practice is Protestant. The social behavior is that the family is the most important social nucleus. The Tuvaluans value the maintenance of harmonious interpersonal relationships. They take pride in presenting themselves as a peaceful and law-abiding society. Physical contact between people when chatting or taking walk in the street is normal, both in people of the same gender and between genders, including holding hands or hugging in public. The greeting. The closing handshake is common between men and between women and between both. The initiative when greeting can be taken by both men and women. About the punctuality. The concept of punctuality is flexible and does not represent a key factor in meetings. Work meetings. When addressing people, they usually do so through their hierarchical position or academic title. It is usually preceded by the surname and sometimes by the person's name instead of surname. Business or presentation cards are widely used during talks or meetings. It is customary to maintain a contact. Now, the outfit. In general, dress is casual for the men and the use of tie is not required. Women's attire is usually conservative. They should avoid necklines or short skirts. GIF. In work meetings, it is customary to give GIF, which are delivered with both hands. Now, let's talk about the cultural barrier with Mexico. The religion. The difference that can be faced since the majority of Mexicans profess Catholicism in terms of religion is that the protectionist recognize that there are several churches and the Catholic, there is only one true about the agree in a single true God. The social behavior are not different. We just have to be formal with people we all know and not fall into the Mexican stereotype. The greeting in Mexico, it is also usual to start meeting with a handshake. And when there is more confidence, you can give a brief hug. And in case of being a woman, a light kiss on the cheek. In the Boldo, we must keep the handshake and wait for them to take the next step. The punctuality. It is often said that the Mexicans are late to events, but these are usually only related when they are not formal events. In negotiation, arriving earlier is the best. In Tuvalu, punctuality is flexible, but to show more education, it is preferable to arrive early. Work meetings. As in Mexico, in Tuvalu, it is important to address first with the highest ranking person, speaking to him by his hierarchical position or his academic rank, generally by his last name and when trust developed by his name. In Mexico, business cards are usually optional or rare to see, but in Tuvalu, it's necessary that you take with you to the meeting. In Tuvalu, it is important that when you negotiate, you look in the eye, while in Mexico, it's not very important, but it shows great commitment and firmness. Outfit. In the case of Florida in Mexico, the man usually wears a suit with a tie, and the woman wears dresses and skirt with dress shirts, usually using the conservative style, but this can also vary in Tuvalu. The tie for men is optional, and women must wear mandatory conservative style. Gift. In Mexico, gifts are seen as a nice detail, but they do not serve as a purpose, other than to be taken into account. In Tuvalu, we must try to offer a gift in negotiation that is not very expensive and offer with both hands. And this is some things that you should know. Just do not mention it in the negotiation. The volleyball and football, soccer, and cricket are popular in Tuvalu. Only Punapuri has a regular electricity supply. There is no new paper. Few motion pictures are shown, and there is only a single radio station. And that's all from my part. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zaid, and I'm going to talk about Botswana, that it's a country on the Africa continent. First, we're going to talk about the location. As we can see on the map, it's bordered by Zambia to the north, Namibia to the west, and South Africa to the south, and Zimbabwe to the east. Talking about the country, it's a landlocked country. This means that it's surrounded by land or that has an access to the sea or ocean. The country is very desert. I read that about the 70% of the country is just desert, and the largest one, it's called Kalahari. And in general information, we have the population, it's around 2,260,000 inhabitants. The capital is called Gaborone. Botswana is divided into 15 districts, 9 rural and 6 urban. And the language, of course, they can speak the universal language, that is English, or their native language, that is Setswana. Okay, the economy. Well, this aspect is interesting because Botswana was considered one of the poorest countries in the world, and now is on the top 5 of the richest in Africa. But how they achieve this increase? When they become independent from the United Kingdom in 1966, one of their main economic sources was a high degree of concentration in the mining sector, mainly the production and export of diamonds to other countries, but also the copper and nickel. The first president used all this money for the national investment, so this helped the country to increase in infrastructure, education, and also health, making Botswana an attractive country for foreign investment. And also as in the most of and also as in the most of African countries, the ecotourism has great importance in purchasing power because it has a great variety of fauna such lions, elephants, or giraffe that are just cool to see for tourists. And we have the government. The Botswana politics is conducted within the framework of presidential representative democratic republic, whereby the president of Botswana is both head of state and head of government, and of a multi-party system. Well, a curious fact in here is that the government is the most uninterrupted democracy in Africa, and it is defined as the least corrupt country in the continent. So that's awesome for Botswana. And education, as I mentioned before, since the independence, enrollment at all levels of education has increased steadily, and by the 21st century, nearly half the adult population had completed primary education. Culture. We have respect for elders, significant adherence to religious beliefs, respect for traditional gender roles, and the traditional kotla, that it's a specific site in the villages in which difference can be discussed in a tone of mutual respect. Gift forms a defined social structure with certain conservative aspects. Okay, in here talking about the social aspect in the culture, we have that the oldest person is traditionally the head of the family, the person responsible for mediating the internal problems, and also talking about the religions, beliefs. The 90% of the country is Christianism. They use the eye contact to judge people if you are trustworthy, and they are actually the society of Botswana is so conservative that it's recommended to don't talk about topics like tribal issues or sexual orientation because they see the homosexuality as a taboo. So that's why it's not recommended to talk about that. And we have the important part, negotiation. If you are Mexican and you want to negotiate with a Botswana, we have that the punctuality is flexible, so there can be delays on the meetings. In Mexico, it is customary to arrive early when it's an important negotiation, and the greeting with a man is just with a long handshake, and if it's all the other guy, you should offer both hands and a reference, just like a synonym of respect. The greeting with a woman is different. It's just shaking hands and sometimes with a kiss on the cheek, but the woman will stop you if it's too much. During the meeting, it's important to maintain the personal distance, of course, and as I mentioned in the previous slide, the eye contact is a symbol of honesty and trust in negotiation. And if you want to give someone a present or a gift, you need to give it with both hands, and it's recommended to be institutional, and the flowers can be an option for a present for a woman. And I also look for information about the clothing, and it's just the same as in Mexico. In the case of men, just to wear a suit or a shirt, and in the case of for women, just wear a dress or a suit combined with a skirt, obviously below the knees, or just pants, I recommend. And And that's all. I think this information can be useful if you want to negotiate with a person from Botswana.
Last but not least, I'm going to present to you the Asian feature of the project with the country of the Philippines.
Ang bayang kong Pilipinas, lupain ang ginto't bulaklak, pag-ibigan sa kaniyang palad, nag-alay ng ganda't dilag.
It is an archipelagic country in Southeast Asia, of which there are really three main islands to take into consideration. Luzon, which is the cultural, economic, and population-wise most important island of the country, having Manila as its largest and capital of the country, having the Tagalog culture and Christianity as their main religion. Visayas, which has the Cebuano culture at its center, and having only Christianity as the only main factor that shares with Luzon, since the Cebuano and the Tagalog are completely different. And Mindanao, which has the same culture as the Visayas, the Cebuano one, with the only main difference is having Islam as their main religion. With this hotspot of cultural backgrounds between the three main islands, can I give you an idea of how much exposure of different cultural backgrounds with people within the country they have, which can be kind of attractive at the time of making negotiations with people of said country, since they can be more open-minded of interacting with people that actually different from them, less xenophobic cases, and of which they can actually be more beneficial at the time of making negotiations. In its case of international relations, the Philippines, it's kind of a mixture between the remnants of the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos, of having a domestic-based political environment, which people are just kind of fed up of how much of an argument they have of isolation, of not interacting much with other countries, even in the same regional area of Southeast Asia. But the empathy that people have within their neighbors actually have been more open since the end of the dictatorship. And at the mid of the 90s, the Philippines have been an actually kind of productive member of the Southeast Asian nations, or at least for ASEAN. The Philippines actually engages with regional neighbors in Southeast Asia through the Association of Southeast Asian Nations as a founding member, with the intention of strengthening regional harmony, stability, and prosperity. He has been a supporter of East Timor since the latter's independence and has expanded trade links with its traditional allies Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. And since the end of the Cold War, relations with Vietnam and Cambodia have thawed in the 90s after the entry into the ASEAN. Government-wise, the Philippines has a democratic government in the form of a constitutional republic with a presidential system, of which it has been in place since the independence of the country, which can have been violated a few times, of which the dictatorship they faced between the 60s and 80s as an example of it. The president functions as both head of state and head of government and is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president is elected by direct election for a single six-year term. Philippine politics tends to be dominated by those with well-known names, such as members of political dynasties or celebrities. This can give you an idea of how much of a corrupt system it is actually based on, of which it's not that different of how much Mexico is actually being held upon, which is kind of the comparison we can actually give at, since they have such a historical background of which they can actually be shared upon. Economy-wise, it is a newly industrialized country. The Philippine economy has been transitioning from one based upon agriculture to an economy with more emphasis upon services and manufacturing. primary exports include integrated circuits, office machinery parts, insulatary wiring, semiconductors, transformers, with having its major trading partners included China, United States, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Germany. Its national currency is the peso, or peso, of which that actually has a commonality, which is issued by the Central Bank of the Philippines, Banco Central Filipinas. With this background, it is actually kind of interesting how much they have transitioned, since most of the actual innovation they have been inputted with, it's a mixture between young Filipinos that have actually studied abroad, mainly in the United States, because language facilities and actually the relationship within the countries has actually facilitated the study and innovation of the market and industry in the country, which is actually pretty interesting, since they actually have been pretty successful at being an innovative market for the Southeast Asian community. Education-wise, which is actually kind of related with how much of its innovation has been made upon, the Department of Education ensures that all school-age children and youths receive a basic high-quality education that will allow them to function as productive, socially responsible citizens. There are dozens of state-run universities and colleges, a large portion of them in Metro Manila, as well as in a number of private institutions, having a high rate of simple literacy rate, and the Department of Education covers elementary, secondary, and non-formal education. Something to point out about is that a good chunk of the people that actually have been facing with education problems have been operating within programs of the country that has actually facilitated the ensurement of good quality education in the country, of which it's actually just pretty much centered in Manila, as said previously, of which a good chunk of the population actually ensures its education and laboral future studying abroad in the United States. Last but not least, once again, there's a cultural barrier that is actually faced upon with the Philippines and Mexico. And I have to be honest, there's actually not much to talk about. It's like a weird example of a country that is actually all in similarity the same, just language main wise, that is actually not being faced upon with Mexico. Contemporary Filipino society consists of nearly 100 culturally and linguistically distinct ethnic groups. Of these, the largest are the Tagalog of Luzon and the Cebuano of the Visayan Islands, of which constitutes about 1/5 of the country's total population. It has been stand upon. It's actually the same as the historical backgrounds that Mexico and Philippines has had. But the main cultural barrier really is just the language. Tagalog is spoken, but English is the one mainstream one. They actually have much of an inspiration of the Spanish language within, so it's not that difficult even if you just know English. Religion-wise, it's Christianity, social behaviors. They're actually kind of friendly. They're amicable. Even in a work environment, they're actually kind of willing to put work aside and actually have to lend a hand to somebody that actually wants to help, even it's not that big of a deal. Agreeing with somebody actually consists of just a well-stretched hand gesture, or even just can be dependent on a greeting of a kiss. It could be actually be given of a kiss. Punctuality, they're actually kind of flexible, just even at the point of which there's a breaking point, to which there's just work stress. They will be willing to be sacrifice time just to be stressed out of the work, of which they're actually kind of a good strategy to which upon members of the workplace could be well upon with it. Work meetings are actually very formal. They're actually very serious at taking their time just to make sure that the time being made upon is just work-based, but actually more willing to just being just slightly more laid off with at least the environment they're actually willing to give off with the people they're actually being around, even by willingly just calling Tito or Tita or having sister or brother within the work environment, even if it's not that confidence based wise. outfit. They're actually very informal since it's a country that's based on very hot temperature. They're actually based off a simple shirt and a simple pants. It could actually just relatively more formal, just like jeans, just like workplace shirts, but not much at all, not like a suit wise. And gifts is actually based upon just a gentle gesture, like a gift just being made of a souvenir that is symbolic of a country, or maybe just candy. It could be just food wise, just a little gesture just to make up on with it. And actually, in the work meeting, it could be just the only thing to take into consideration the core, well, the credential, the labor credential representation. To end up with this, I could actually be kind of hyped up, and considering how much of a similar culture Mexico and the Philippines are. Really, the language is the only thing that's actually separating us. Even if we just spoke English, they actually could be technically the same peoples. They actually have the same hospitable culture. The people are actually kind of helpful. They have consideration of different cultural backgrounds. It really is kind of a beneficial thing to have in consideration and just working with Filipinos.